Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, when is it going to happen? So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the financial crisis, the credit crisis that I've been saying is coming. So I put out a video last week where there were a bunch of news stories mentioned, but one of those was about the increasing use of this bank term funding program that was put in place back in March to bail out the banking system. We're seeing greater use of that now. And in some of the comments, I saw a bunch of people who it seemed to have frustration with, well, when is this coming? We keep talking about this, but it doesn't seem to arrive. It doesn't seem to come. There were some people saying, stop making these financial warnings altogether. Somebody else said, I've stopped warning friends and family members because everything seems to be all right and I don't want to seem like a Chicken Little. And those are all legitimate concerns. And I hope to be able to address some of those today because with some personal stories about why I do this, why I'm warning against this. I can tell you guys it's not because I want to get a bunch of clicks or views. I've got better ways to spend my time. Frankly, I'd rather spend time with my wife and children. But I'm doing this because I want to help people. I want to warn people of what I see coming. Now, let's go back in time about 4 years ago to early January 2020. There were a number of news stories coming out of China. We know a lot of those were false at this point, but it was clear something was happening. And I remember very clearly, I went back, I checked my calendar to make sure I'm correct on this. But the night of January 23rd, it was a Thursday, and our family was at a visitation for a family member that had recently passed away. And we had at that time, maybe 6-month-old baby, right? So needless to say, she didn't really want to be around the crowd. So I took her out into another area where her crying wouldn't bother anybody. She got calmed down, looked at my phone to see what the news was. And at that time, there was a breaking news story about China shutting down the city of Wuhan and a number of other cities. And that's when it really popped up on the radar. What could be going on right now? What does this mean for a number of issues? And one of those that became clear in the next day or two was that there would be a major impact to the supply chain, regardless of what COVID was or turned out to be. If you shut down entire Chinese cities, it's going to have an impact on the global supply chain. So I remember that Saturday, going over to a house with some family members in it. I was running some errands. They were sitting at the table, and on the way out, I said, hey guys, you might want to make sure you have a deep pantry, and you might want to get some N95 mask, which, hindsight, nobody needed those, and some toilet paper, right? Because my wife and I had discussed this stuff. There's supply chain problems that they shut things down. The grocery stores empty out. Want to make sure we have a deep pantry. What do I want to make sure that I have? Well, I want to make sure I have toilet paper because there's not really a substitute for toilet paper. If the store doesn't have steak, I can get chicken. If they don't have chicken, well, I can get some fish. And if they don't have fish, I'll get crab legs or something like that. But if you don't have toilet paper, you're pretty much, your next option is leaves, right? Leaves outside. So we were getting those things. Well, when I made this pronouncement, when I said, hey guys, you might want to do this, the response I got was like this. It was just pure silence and staring at me as if I had walked in with a tinfoil hat on and said, UFOs are landing in the front yard and the aliens are coming to get us, right? It was just, you could hear the crickets chirp. It was just this dead air silence. And so that had an impact on me, and it made me go, maybe I don't want to warn that many people. So I was very reluctant to tell people, hey, this might have some impacts on the supply chain. So you might want to make some preparations just in case. So there were people like my dad who I told, hey, Dad, go do these things. And he did those things. But then there were other people that I said, hey, have you seen this in the news? Oh, yeah. You might want to think about doing the, very dilly-dally, trying to dance around it, see where they thought. Because I cared what people thought and how they viewed me. And in hindsight, after all of that played out, I said, never again am I going to do that. If I believe something is going to happen, I'm going to warn people, and I could care less what other people think about me, because what matters is what Jesus thinks and not what other people think. Because in hindsight, I looked back and thought, I really could have helped some people, some friends and family members, if I hadn't been afraid of saying very clearly what I could see coming. So for instance, and here we're going to talk about timing, because you can see something coming that you think is inevitable or that you know is inevitable, but get the timing completely wrong, or it's just impossible to know the timing. So we live in a society where people expect once I know something, it should happen just like that. We want things to, the challenge or the problem is presented and the solution comes along and it unfolds and it's in a nice, neat package at the end of the 1 hour episode during prime time, right? We're used to what I want this now. Delayed gratification is not part of our lifestyle anymore. We want things to happen now and quickly. And so if things take months or years to unfold, we lose interest. And so I want to take another example from that same time frame. So at that time frame, I'm looking going, looks like this, supply chain, it could be an issue. And so they're shutting down these areas of China. What happens if other countries do the same thing? And if they do, what happens to the supply chain? What happens to the stock market? Would we want to have all of our retirement money in the stock market like it was at that time? So they had a story come out on January 28th. I'm sorry. July 28th is my birthday. That's why I made that mistake. January 28th. So this is just a few days later. Came out, I think, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was about this woman who lived in Shanghai. She went to Germany because her company had some sort of seminar. She left. She was fine. She gets home and her parents had COVID. So they tested her for COVID. She had it. So then they notified the people in Germany and they started testing the office. And 3 of the people who had simply been in a meeting with her 2-3 days before, they had it. And there were 2 or 3 of their family members, they had it. And so this light bulb went off in my mind. If this is as contagious as they think and the reaction from the governments around the world is the same as the one in China, this is going to spread within a couple of months, shut down large parts of the economy, and the market's going to crash. So I called my wife and I said, hey, and there are moments in life when you have to make a quick decision. And if you vacillate, if you sit there going, I'm not sure, I want to wait and see, the moment is lost. And so I'm looking at the market then. It wasn't doing anything. Everything was rosy and good times ahead. And I said, I think we need to sell everything, right? and that's not a decision that I'm not used to making any sort of rash decision like that. But I said, God, I think we need to sell everything. So we sold everything. And then over the course of the next 2-3 weeks, the market went up. And so I asked myself, well, where am I wrong? And I'm questioning myself, am I wrong in this belief system? No, the reasons for doing this still apply. Even though the market is going up. And I thought when that we made that initial decision, I said, we've got to do this now because in the morning, everybody's going to digest this information and the market's going to crash. Instead, for 3 weeks, it went up. So we reassessed it. Is our thinking wrong? But no, the underlying reasons were still there. And we knew, well, based on this thought process, we'll know for sure in a couple of months, either this exponentially expands or it doesn't. We'll know. Worst case scenario, market goes up a few points, whatever, and we missed out. But if this actually happens and the market crashes, then we'll miss a huge part of the downside. And it took about 3 weeks, but that's exactly what happened. So we saw that play out. The reasons were there for those who were paying attention, for those who were looking. But it didn't happen when I thought it would happen. I thought everybody else is going to recognize this right now. They'll sell tomorrow. Instead, several weeks went by. We've seen this happen many times in the past. The housing market bubble back in 15, 20 years ago, there were many people pointing to that. In 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, saying, this is a big bubble. This can't go on. You can't have housing prices going up twice as fast as people's incomes. That's historically just, it doesn't work. This is going to collapse. And for a long time, people said, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. Look at this. Things are going up. And yet it was foreseeable for those who were paying attention. They couldn't know the timing of it, but ultimately it proved correct. And so when we're looking at this financial crisis that's coming, have the underlying factors changed? No, they have not. Has it happened exactly as we've thought it would happen, or how I've said, I think that this is going to happen by now? No, not necessarily. And again, I've said I think it's going to happen in this time frame. I don't know, because I'm certain it's coming. So again, I want to take a look at some of those reasons why we would say that. Again, another story of this. Once we had that crash and the Federal Reserve, all the central banks came in and just started printing and throwing currency at the problems. At that time, based on learning from the mistake before of not warning people the way I otherwise would have, because I was afraid of what they would think, went to everybody I knew and said, inflation is coming, guys, prepare. Have a deep pantry, get some gold and silver. Back then, it was a lot less expensive than it is now to get those things. It proved to be true. It took about a year from that point to when most people started seeing that, and before it started becoming common knowledge that inflation was here. So, guys, the underlying fundamentals have not changed. I want to take a look at this chart right here. So this is from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. We looked at this starting probably about a year and a half ago when it was spiking upwards. So this is the percentage change year over year in the Fed funds rate going back to the 1950s. And we see this right here. This is to believe that this can happen and that everything's just going to be fine, right? There's no problems here, right? So we see this huge anomaly and we go, oh, don't worry about it. They got it all under control. They know what they're doing. As we looked at this, I mentioned this is going to go down because it's a percentage change year over year. So as we get past that first year, it'll start to go down, but that doesn't mean the problem is solved. And it takes 12 to 18 months for those Fed rate hikes to work their way through the economy. One of the reasons, or an example that I'd like to give right now, is right here. So let's look. This is Canadian mortgage trends. It says RBC bracing for renewal impact, 3/4 of its mortgages to see higher rates by 2026. So If you don't live in Canada, you probably don't know that they don't have 30-year fixed mortgages as we do in the United States. Most of the mortgages are 5-year fixed mortgages, and they reset every 5 years based on whatever the interest rates are. So if you've had somebody who's got a 5-year mortgage at 2% and current mortgage rates are at 7%, but their mortgage doesn't reset until 2024 or 2025, well, you aren't going to see a huge impact on that person right now. But once that mortgage resets at 7%, all of a sudden, their mortgage payment may double. It's going to go up substantially. And that's going to take that income that they would put towards something else, assuming they could even afford to make that payment. They would then have to divert those funds from something else to pay their mortgage, which takes it out of some other part of the economy. And guys, this is going on everywhere as these refinancings take place, not just mortgages in Canada, but things like commercial real estate all around the world. They don't have 30-year fixed mortgages for commercial real estate. In the United States, 87% of the commercial real estate mortgages are interest-only loans on 5-year rates, fixed rates. So as they have to, you have a lot of these offices that are unoccupied based on work from home, and they're going to have to refinance those at rates 2 to 3 times what they were originally financed at. When the value of the property is declined, it's not going to work. They're going to default on that. It goes on the bank. We've already looked at the unprecedented, unrealized losses at banks. They're only going to get higher as a lot of these mortgages and debts are restructured or just outright defaulted on because they can't get paid. There are statistics, go out and look it up. The Russell 2000, so this is 2,000 U.S. publicly traded companies, 40% of them, so this would be 800 of those 2,000 companies are considered zombie companies, meaning their operations can barely cover the interest payments on the debt they owe. So when they have to roll over that debt at higher rates, those companies will go out of business. They will not be able to continue moving forward. They've only been able to continue moving forward in years past because of these artificially low interest rates. So guys, the point of saying all of this is the reasons for believing this crisis are coming are still intact. Nothing has changed. I have not been saying this for years and years and years. So, for example, here we have on Rapture Ready, well, an old picture of me from a long time ago when I had hair, right? But we have all of these articles that I've written over the course of 16 years now. I think the first one I put up in January of 2007. So you won't find any of these articles talking about the markets, the world markets, and a financial crisis, a market crash, anything like that, until we get to, I think, late 2020. So by the time we get to late 2020 and we notice that this is coming, then you start to see the next financial crisis, things like, so this is only maybe a year and a half that this has even been on the radar as something that I'm talking about, which seems like that's all I've ever talked about because this channel is only about a year and a half old. But I want to keep in mind, so a little over a year ago when I started talking about this, at that time, I did several videos where I said by November 1st, 2022, I expect a Lehman moment, meaning another Lehman Brothers type crash that's going to cause the financial crisis. And then I did a video when that day came that said I was wrong, right? I was wrong. I thought that would come then. But keep in mind, while I was wrong about what would happen, I was not wrong about the conditions, because before that we saw this. If you remember this, UK gilts suffer biggest collapse since March 2020 meltdown. That happened in late September of 2022. Had the central banks of the world not coordinated, and especially the US Federal Reserve with the Bank of England, we would have seen financial contagion on a world scale that would have caused a massive financial crisis. But they averted that. They were able to paper over that. Then we had, 6 months go by until March of 2023. So then we saw something similar to all of this happening in the United States, where we saw Silicon Valley Bank collapse. We saw First Republic Bank collapse. We saw Signature Bank collapse. So the second, third, and fourth largest banks collapse. We would have seen a collapse of the entire banking system. But globally, central banks engineered a rescue of one of the largest globally systemically important banks in the world. They issued this bank term funding program, just created it out of thin air, bailed out a lot of these banks. But we're getting to a point where that comes to an end. So, but the problems have not been fixed. Again, the unrealized losses at banks are still there. All of these problems that are under the surface are still there. They've just been papered over, right? We have a saying here about putting lipstick on the pig, right? It's still a pig. You can put lipstick on it. It's still a pig. So we do not see the underlying problems fixed. And so you could say, well, why can't they just keep doing these things and keep papering over? Well, they can't keep doing those things because they're starting to create cracks in the market. So the first of those that we saw was inflation. We saw them bail things out in 08, 09. We didn't see inflation as a result of all that money printing they did. Now we're seeing that. We never saw problems with the functioning of the U.S. Treasury debt markets. Now we're seeing that. That's what we talked about a couple of weeks ago with the glitches, right? The glitches they're having in the market. Oh, it's a ransomware attack. Oh, it was just a random glitch that none of the banks would work in Japan, and then a couple of weeks later, oh, it was just just a glitch, a coincidence. Who would have thought that none of the banking transactions at the largest banks in the United States worked either for several days. These treasury auction problems, glitch, another glitch, just coincidence. So that's a sign of the system cracking under the pressure. They put on so many Band-Aids, they put on so much duct tape, you got the leaky boat, they're sticking their fingers in the holes. And just because we can see that boat is sinking, but it hasn't sunk yet, doesn't mean it ain't gonna sink. It just means that it has not happened yet, but it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Think of the Titanic. When the Titanic sunk, well, the bow of the boat went straight up into the air. You could say, well, we're not sinking, we're going straight up, right? You're going straight up for a moment until you get sucked down under the water at the end. So that's the type of situation we're in right now. We've seen things like this happen in the past. I would encourage people to go check out this documentary right here. This is The Crash of 1929. It's a PBS documentary. I'll try to put the link at the pin at the top of the comments, put it in the description. It gives a good overview of what led up to the 1929 crash and the Great Depression that followed. Guys, there were many people warning of this. I would recommend this book right here, The Great Crash. So this was both of these cataloged. There were people out there. There was Roger Babson and Paul Warburg. Both of those individuals warned for several years that this was coming. Babson spent 2 years telling people that the market is going to crash and there's going to be a catastrophic economic outcome on the other side of it. And he was told, oh, you're not a patriot. You're trying to talk the markets down. You're throwing a wet blanket on things. Everything's fine. Look around. Everything's fine. Right up until the day of the crash, business leaders throughout the world said everything is fine. There's no problem. Things have never been better. But there were people warning about it. So would you say somebody, well, Babson, he was warning about it in 1927, 1928. He didn't know that it would be, the precise day that, Black Monday, October 28th, 1929. That is the day. Because he didn't get that day specifically right. Let's just ignore what he was saying. Again, you can ignore what I'm saying and disagree. That's fine. But I'd like to see people refute the economic data that I've put forward. Because again, the underlying issues that I'm pointing to and saying this is our concern, this is going to lead to these things, none of that has changed. And so until that changes, I'm going to keep warning people. I'm going to keep telling people. And guys, there's a parallel here. Think about, people have been warning of the return of Jesus for many years. And many people have been saying, we're in the season of the Lord's return since back in 1948 when Israel became a nation state again. Were those people wrong because it hasn't happened yet? Or were they right? I believe they're right. We were in the season of the Lord's return. But because somebody had it in their mind, well, that means next week, doesn't mean that person was wrong unless that person was specifically saying next week. But the underlying conditions were there. The signs were there that the end is near. And those signs have only continued to accelerate. So am I going to stop warning people about the second coming of Jesus Christ because I'm afraid of what people might think? No, right? Likewise, am I going to not warn people about economic calamity I see coming because I'm afraid of what people think? No, I'm not going to do that. And some people would say, well, who cares what happens in this world? Hey guys, I do. And Jesus does. Think about the story of the Good Samaritan. Would it have been all right if the Good Samaritan had walked by and said, do you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and personal Savior? You do? All right, you're good. And then kept on down the road. No, he took care of that man's suffering as well. As we can do both. We can lead people to Christ, make sure that their eternal destination is secure. But if we can prevent needless suffering, for instance, if people don't have toilet paper, right? So back when we were preparing in January 2020, in February 2020, we got toilet paper. One of the things we did was we had a baby that was 6 months old. What happens if the supply chain messes up and there's no baby formula? So we calculated how much we needed until she was off of the formula, and we bought that much. We didn't go and hoard and buy everything that was on the shelf. We'd just go every day and get a little bit more until we had what we needed. So there's plenty for everybody else as well. But what did we see? Well, about a year later, there was a baby formula shortage. And the toilet paper shortage hit big. In like March, April of 2020, we were able to operate from a position of abundance. Turns out we had more toilet paper than we needed, so we were able to give away toilet paper to a lot of people that needed it. It may seem like a small thing, but if you can alleviate the suffering of a family of 7 people that doesn't have any toilet paper in their house, then why wouldn't you do that? And guys, what I've been saying to prepare is simply make sure your gas tank is full every Friday. Make sure you got a deep pantry. There's no risk in doing that. I'm not telling people, leave your house, leave your job, go out into the mountains and build a big bunker full of supplies. No. Buy food that you plan to eat anyway over the course of the next 6 months, nothing happens, and I'm totally wrong, well, you just eat that food, right? And the odds are, if you buy that food 6 months from now, it's going to cost a lot more than it does today. So if you go ahead and buy it today, you probably come out ahead. Likewise, if you fill your gas tank on Friday, the gas station's still open come Monday, well, you just drive until that gas is gone and you fill up again. It's no big deal. There's no loss to anybody for doing these simple things to prepare. Just look around, see what your vulnerabilities are. Is there something I can do to prepare? The Bible says it's wise and prudent for a person to prepare when they see danger coming. And it says that if we see danger coming, we should warn other people. So I'm going to do that, even though for a long time may go by where I look like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. That's okay, because I'm confident that I know what I'm talking about. And the worst case scenario, if I don't and I'm a fool, well, it's not going to hurt anybody who listened to me and just had a little bit extra canned goods in their cupboard. It's not going to hurt anybody that they filled up a few days early at the gas station. It's not going to hurt anybody. So, guys, I'm going to continue to warn based on the lessons I've learned from the past of, guys, being afraid of what other people think. In every area of life, don't let that happen to you the way it did to me. All we should care about is what Jesus thinks. And we should not be fearful of telling people about Jesus and the hope we have in Christ, even though we know the reaction may not always be the one that we want, as we only get those chances when we get them. So take advantage. One day we'll look back from eternity and think, I wish I'd taken advantage of that opportunity. So just move forward, warning people about things you see coming. And so, unless the data changes, I'm going to continue talking about this. I believe it has clear implications for Bible prophecy. We had the mark of the beast is economic in nature. We have Revelation 6 talking about massive hyperinflation. The economy and the control of currency and money gives control and power on a global scale. So this has major implications for Bible prophecy. It's not worldly to talk about economic events and not, again, we've talked about this before with preparation. When we talk about preparing for things, some people say, you're not trusting in the Lord. You can do both. Because I prepare doesn't mean I don't trust the Lord. You can do both at the exact same time. God has given us a mind to use. He's given us the ability to ask him for guidance in these things. And again, people who say, I don't prepare for that, I trust in the Lord for everything. Well, do they have insurance on their house? Have they set aside cash to pay the electric bill and the water bill? And if so, I would ask, why are you doing that? Why do you have anything in your bank account? Go empty it out and trust in the Lord. So, guys, you can do both of those things at the same time. We should do both of those things. We should be trying to save people and secure their eternal destination by pointing them to Christ, letting the Holy Spirit do his work. But we should also be trying to alleviate suffering whenever possible by warning people when we see events like this coming. So that's what I think. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And God willing, I will see you on Monday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.